All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks again, and welcome to another episode of the .NET Docs, where we have 60 minutes of unscripted .NET entertainment. As .NET doctors, we prescribe healthy choices in .NET. I am your host, Luis, and with me is my co-host, Myra. And today we have our guests here who are going to be talking about Xamarin open source software and building apps with it. So our guests today are Brandon and Luis. Guys, would you like to introduce yourselves? Start with Brandon, maybe.
Sure. Thanks, Luis. My name is Brandon Minnick. I work at Microsoft as a developer advocate and specifically focusing in C#, .NET, Xamarin, and Azure. And yeah, today we'll be chatting about an app that Luis and I made and have been working on for, oh gosh, probably about a year now, and showing it all off because it's all done in .NET, even though it's a totally native iOS and Android app, which sounds weird, but you can do it with Xamarin, and we'll be showing that off today.
Awesome. Luis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Thank you, Luis. So, as you said, my name is Luis. I'm originally from the Dominican Republic. I'm a software engineer. I work at Rider System as a senior Xamarin mobile developer. And yeah, as Brandon said, we are in love with Xamarin. We have passion for .NET. And today we're just going to show you what we've been doing this last couple of months during COVID with this great app of ours, Git Trends, and how we went about redesigning it and launching it to the public.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks again for joining us. And I'm sure folks are going to be really interested in seeing how you went about building that app. So with that, why don't we just go into our checkup doc. All right. There we go. Okay, so what we have here is a tutorial. So if you want to get started building iOS and Android apps using C#, Xamarin is a really great tool for that. As you can see here, you can build it both with Windows and Mac OS. And this tutorial here kind of walks you through how you can download and install Xamarin. That's part of, if you're on Windows, you can just install it as a workload. And it will take you through that entire development process. All the way until you get a nicely functioning app using Xamarin Forms, which perhaps you guys may or may not be covering later today. All right, awesome. So you'll learn even more about Xamarin Forms, and the reason for saying that is there's actually multiple ways that perhaps you guys might cover of building apps with Xamarin, and Xamarin Forms is just one of them. So yeah, make sure to check it out. And try it out for yourself. That way, after you see the demos from our guests here today, maybe you're interested in going and trying it out yourself. So make sure to check it out. And with that, let's move on to our hallway track. All right. So today, you folks are going to be talking to us about Xamarin, and as you mentioned, your application Git Trends. So why don't we just dive right in? Brandon or Luis, who's going to share their screen first? Let's see some code and demos.
I'll kick it off. Let me know when you can see it. But
yep.
But yeah, something you just touched on, Luis, which is definitely a good point, and probably should also just introduce what is Xamarin to the world if you've never heard of it. Xamarin is a way to make native iOS and Android apps all in C#. So, or I should say all in .NET, because you can also use F# too. But all Xamarin does is it just wraps every single API for iOS and surfaces those APIs in C#. And then it takes every API on Android and surfaces those into C# as well. And so really, Xamarin is more or less just a wrapper around Objective-C and Java so that we can do it all in C#. And so obviously, if you're like me and love C#, this is amazing, because then you don't have to worry about learning Objective-C or Swift or Java or Kotlin or any other language to make your mobile apps. But it also means you can share code. So since both apps are now being made in C#, you can essentially work on both apps at the same time. You can share code between the apps. You only have to add a new feature once. You only have to fix a bug once. And there's just a huge benefit there for, we'll say, indie devs like myself that like this app here that we're showing off today, Git Trends. It's totally free app. We don't make any money off it. It's just something that we love making, and it's open source, free to download. And so one of the benefits of using Xamarin is we can create it and iterate on it much, much faster. Whereas if we were using the native tool stacks, then we would have to have written the iOS app in Swift, and then we would have had to rewrite the same exact app, even though it has the same features and it's talking to the same backend. You have to rewrite that in Java or Kotlin to get it to run on Android. But with Xamarin, because it wraps up all the native APIs, it is a native app. It runs just like a native app because, well, it is. It compiles down to the native binaries using the native APIs. And if you want to get even crazier, Xamarin also has a library called Xamarin Forms that allows you to share UI code between iOS and Android as well. So that's what we're using for this app. Huge shout out to Xamarin Forms. I'm a big fan. I'm a little biased. I used to work at Xamarin. That's actually how I made it at Microsoft, because Microsoft acquired us a couple years ago. But yeah, with Xamarin Forms, we're sharing easily over 90% of the code between our iOS and Android app. And what's really great is guys like me and Luis can just do this in our spare time, nights and weekends, and we can provide this app that we wanted. You know, this is definitely an app that we wanted to create kind of selfishly for ourselves, but also to share it with the world by putting it in the app stores. So, so what are we talking about today? This is the app called Git Trends. So this was an app that, I think the idea for this started evolving about 2 years ago. And it kind of came around the fact that I had a lot of open source repos on GitHub, and it was difficult to maintain and know which ones are being used, which ones are getting views, which ones are getting clones and forks, because I think I definitely have over 100. I don't know if I've broken 200 yet. And they're all samples that I wanted to share with the community. Like, here's how you can do one specific thing, or maybe here's a library for a NuGet package that I've created. And keeping up with that was really tough. And something I found on the GitHub website, you can actually see insights. Let me show you this real quick, because Git Trends isn't doing anything that you can't already do on GitHub. It just makes it a lot easier and concise. So, for example, on GitHub, we can go to the Insights tab, and we can click on Traffic for any repo that we own. And then we can see how many people are cloning the app, how many people are visiting and viewing the app, how many of those are unique visitors, how many of those are repeat visitors, and then also like where did those views come from. So maybe somebody wrote a blog post, looks like somebody posted on Reddit about it, Twitter, LinkedIn. And so you can start to understand where your community is, where they're coming from, and then also which of your repos are most popular. And this is all great. I love that GitHub provides this info because I use it all the time, but it's very isolated. So Git Trends, or this is Git Trends, the GitHub repo, like we were saying earlier, this app's totally open source. And so if I wanted to go check out all these stats for another one of my repos, well, then I have to jump all the way back to my GitHub profile. I have to click on a different repo. We have to go back into Insights. And it was just kind of a pain to do this all manually. So that's kind of where this idea for Git Trends came from, where we said, why don't we just create a mobile app that organizes all of these stats together? So for example, on this page right here, this is the first page you see. Well, after you've logged into the app and connected to GitHub, this is the first page you see. And right here, I can see that my Git Trends app has had 2,000 views in the last week, or last 2 weeks, and 283 of those are unique visitors. It's got 333 stars. We can sort by certain statistics. So if you're more interested in maybe issues, like you want to track like how many open issues there you have on the repos, you can sort by issues, and then you'll see the forks. And once you click into it, I should say, and you'll notice that we have this little trending tag here. So part of Git Trends is that, yes, we're viewing the trends of the app. So yes, we can click into this. We'll see all the views and clones here over the last couple weeks. We'll see the star history. We'll see the referring sites where all the traffic's coming from. But also, it lets you know if your app is what we call trending. And that means there's been a spike in activity over the last couple days to let you know that, hey, this repo is getting a lot of views or a lot of clones lately. The app will send you a push notification. And what's great, well, the reason I love that is I get that notification. And if it's for an app that I haven't touched in a while, like, I don't know if I've touched this Power BI sample app that I made in a couple weeks, like that kind of tells me that, oh, this app's trending. I should jump in, check out the code, make sure everything's still up to date, everything's still working, making sure that this repo is maintained, especially since people are viewing it. And then also you can see where the folks are coming from. So like there's the spike in traffic here, and then we can see where all these people coming from, and looks like they found it on Google and the Xamarin Forum. So yeah, basically helps you keep your arms around all of your open source repos on GitHub.
Very cool. So question there. So in addition to having this tag there trending, does it also do like push notifications? Does the app do that?
Yeah, exactly. So if we jump over the settings page, you can register for notifications, and once you do, then the app will check periodically to see if any repos are trending, and you'll get a little push notification that says something like, your Git Trends repo is trending, and you can tap on it and jump straight into it and kind of see the stats and what's going on. And yeah, kind of I mean, I'm lazy, so I think it's a good thing, but yeah, like the lazy man's way to monitor all your GitHub repos, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, since you're doing it right now, you're doing it at the, I guess, individual level, would it also work for, let's say, an organization, say I'm Microsoft and I want to keep track of all my repos? Would that work as well?
So you can connect your, GitHub. Yeah, GitHub calls them organizations. So like there's the Microsoft organization on GitHub, and you can totally connect it. I personally don't think I had those admin rights for the Microsoft organization to connect to GitHub. But yeah, you can totally connect when you connect to GitHub. And so it'll ask you, it'll say, hey, I see you're a member of Microsoft or Microsoft Docs or whatever organization you belong to at GitHub. And then you can also add that in here. And so, yeah, you'll see like there's even a couple Xamarin repos that I'm a contributor to / what's GitHub called, an admin collaborator on, so I can see the stats for those as well. And also like good friend Jim Bennett made this great workshop called Mobile Apps of Tomorrow. We collaborated on it, and so that shows up here. So yeah, it's kind of up to you. It's definitely all the GitHub repos you own under your name, and any other ones you are a collaborator on, and any other organizations that you've authenticated when you connect to GitHub when you first launch the app.
Sweet. And we have a question here from Zaid Dar. Can you get this app on any app store?
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends how you define any. It is available on the iOS App Store and the Android Google Play Store. And so if you go to, I think we have the link. I don't know if we can show that as a pop-up. But if you head to the Git Trends GitHub repo, all of those links are available in the README. I even have there's a short link if you just go to gittrends.com, gittrends.com. Then it'll bring you down here, and this is where you can find the links to the App Store or the Google Play Store. Of course, if you just Google Git Trends, it'll probably show up as well. But yeah, definitely download it, check it out. Let us know if you have any feedback, because like you said earlier, this app's totally open source, and so we've gotten some awesome pull requests by members of the community. Huge shout out to everybody who's contributed to the code. But then also we get great feature requests all the time. And so there's things like adding more translations. The app's already been translated into a couple different languages, but also things like maybe we want data beyond 2 weeks. Maybe we want to add some cool features. You can just come in here in GitHub, and just like you would for any other library that belongs in or that is in GitHub, you can open up a feature request, or hopefully you don't find any bugs, but maybe there's a bug you stumble across. Let us know. We want to fix those too. But yeah, come on in and join the party. It's been a really cool experience. How much the community has helped out on this. We certainly couldn't have done it all by ourselves.
Yeah, that's really great that you have all this engagement from folks in the community, and they're really passionate about improving the app, right? Continuing on the topic of app stores, a lot of the major ones are the iOS and the Android App Store, Play Store. But our co-host here, Cam, asked, is there any reason why a Xamarin app couldn't be deployed to the Amazon App Store?
No, not at all. I've done that in the past. And I'm going to ask this out of pure ignorance because I'm a total iOS fanboy. iPhones, I use Mac. So I'm kind of curious if the Amazon store is still a thing and if enough folks use it, because I did push a different app. I've got a couple apps in the App Store. I pushed one of my first apps. I pushed that to the Google Play and to the Amazon store, but I didn't see it didn't gain a lot of traction there compared to Google Play. So I'm not saying that I was right, but again, lazy. So I stopped pushing to the Amazon store. But yeah, if there's popular stores out there that we're missing out on, let us know. I will say one thing we haven't done yet, but it is one of the feature requests is to bring it to Windows. And because this is all done in C#, because Xamarin Forms makes it easy to share that code, we do want to do that, but right now we are waiting for the next version of .NET to come out. So .NET 6 will kind of make that.
Yeah, I was going to ask if with .NET MAUI that would help with the process.
Yeah, so the big blocker for Git Trends was, since we're in the code, why not show off a little code? So we have the Android-specific project, the iOS-specific project, and those both reference this .NET Standard library. And we're using .NET Standard 2.1. And that was the blocker for us to bring it to UWP, because UWP only goes up to .NET Standard 2. And the reason that we're using .NET Standard 2.1 is to take advantage of the iasync enumerable, blanking on async streams, all those fun things where you can iterate over like API calls, for example. And that was a huge performance boost to Git Trends because it's making just tons and tons of API calls to the GitHub APIs. Yeah, like I said, none of this data is secret. We're not making any data here. We're just pulling it down from the GitHub APIs. And some of the data comes from GitHub's GraphQL APIs, which when you have iasync enumerable and you can do a wait for each loops, it makes it really easy to iterate over the data that comes back. And as the data comes back, we can show it on the screen. So we don't have to wait for the total API call to finish to show you an update as a user. You can kind of start seeing the data come in as we get it as well. So yeah, fingers crossed, .NET 6, then we'll be able to bring this over to Windows. But cool. It's on the to-do list, but TBD on a date.
Yeah, and I think that this is one way that, kind of showcases that benefit of having everything in .NET, right? So in this case, you have this service, which I think I may have seen it somewhere in the code, that's the one that's pulling the data and parsing it and making it, formatting it so that it's displayed. And in this case, you're using a Xamarin or a mobile app as a front end, but you could just as easily make it a Blazor app or a Windows WPF app right? So these services are reusable regardless of what that front end is. And again, you're still using the latest and greatest of .NET.
Yeah, and that's part of the exciting thing that's, you know, with .NET 6 coming, with .NET MAUI coming, those are the exciting possibilities, right? Like we could bring this, or potentially one day, if .NET MAUI runs on the web or runs on Blazor, then yeah, we could bring this to Blazor, or we could bring it to, well, we plan on hopefully doing Windows, but yeah. And the other cool thing is, if anybody out there just wishes this was a web app, you could do it. You can literally help us out. You can open up a PR. Happy to merge that in as well. But yeah, I mean, that's one of my most favorite things about being a C# developer these days, is that I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to learn a new language if I want to do a desktop app versus a mobile app versus a web app. We can kind of selfishly just do it all in .NET and C# these days.
Yeah, awesome.
And the app is very pretty as well. Is that something that Xamarin provides out of the box, or did you use any libraries or things like that? Like,
yeah, well, first, thank you. But I can't take any credit for it. So I'm going to pass it over to Luis, because when I first made this app, it didn't look anywhere near this good. So,
okay.
Yeah, Luis, tell them all about it.
Yeah, of course. Let me go ahead and share my screen here to help illustrate what it used to look like at first.
Oh, you still have the old screenshots?
Yeah.
Oh, he's gonna burn you.
No. So this is an open source project, and I was really excited to be a part of it. This is one of the parts why I love the open source world and just being a community. I love how active the .NET community is and the Xamarin community. So Brandon has this great idea, right? Which is the app we're talking about, Git Trends. In early 2020, he decided he wanted to launch it to the stores, right? So he started reaching out to some of us, and he presented this idea. So for most of us, since we're all developers, when we saw the code, it was beautiful. Like he's using all the latest goodies. He's using Azure Functions. He's using the APIs of GitHub, and the app in backend wise was awesome. But when I first saw the app, the first thing I thought was, okay, how can we collaborate to this app, and how can we make it better? So immediately, one option was the UI. So if you guys see, initially the UI could use some TLC, but I would like to also make a note, and is that I would definitely go the route Brandon went with his POC, right? Because initially the whole point of the app was testing the limits of Xamarin and also getting the idea together. So I will definitely not prioritize working on the UI. I will prioritize making it work and getting your idea good and getting the feedback, right? Because that's something we learned was really important for us. So once I decided I wanted to open the UI, I asked Brandon, do you know a little bit about UI? He was like, not really. I was like, okay, me neither, but I think this could be a little cool project, right? To figure out how we could do like a nice production ready UI and make it look like a modern app like these days. So we started a huge research process and we learned a ton. It eventually generated what we now call the Mobile App Redesign for Developers live series that we're doing in the .NET Dominicana Twitch channel. And if you see here a brief overview, this is literally
keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, the whole timeline of how we learn really basic and fundamental things about design, like working with colors, working with dark themes, working with creating components. So basically the idea we had was just let's first put all the screenshots and then let's start working page by page and start getting inspiration. So that was the first thing we learned, that inspiration was a key component in the design process and making your app look better. So there's a lot of great websites out there like Dribble, like Behance, that the whole design community is there posting their portfolio, posting all their ideas for apps. So we literally just sit on the shoulders of those giant designers, and we just started looking at a bunch of design, taking ideas, learning the concepts, and here you can see our first approach on redesigning the repositories page. Let's say so. Well, actually, the first one was this one. So for some reason, at the start, we were totally in love of making this little like tab components for the stats. And we were like, yeah, I think this will work just fine, right? So when we started doing like getting the feedback from our friends, I had some friends that were designers. They were like, it looks really pretty, but I don't think it's gonna work. And I was like, but why wouldn't it work if I have my 3 stats there, everything looks fine. And they're like, yeah, increase that to 4, please. So as soon as we added another one, you can see how immediately you get a perception like everything is cluttered, right? There's you can't see everything at a glance and understand what's happening. And something we base our design off that we have really clear is that we want the app to be able to be used by lazy people, right? So us. We wanted to have everything at a glance. So I wanted to immediately after I saw this screen, grasp everything that was there and just navigate quickly, right? So once we revisited that thought, we understood that, yeah, using these big tabs components was not going to be the best option because it draws too much attention to the stats and it confuses you. So then we went over and got some more inspiration, and we remember our beloved Twitter. Long ago, they used to have their stats like this, and we said, why don't we try it just putting the icon and putting the stats, and yeah, you can see how much better compared to this one it works. And
Yeah, very clear.
yeah. Yeah, and that's basically how we learn about design. It was just a whole
Sorry to cut you off there. Are these stats like actionable? Can you click on them to dive deeper?
Yeah, so in the cards, we didn't make them tappable because we made the whole card tappable. Because once you tap the card, it will take you to this view, which Brandon was showing in the app, which gives you a better overview of the stats and gives you the chart as well.
Yeah, because those sort of like pill, like, but how the stats were displayed in that initial design, like to me right away, I was like, oh, I could click on that and dive deeper.
Yeah, that's another thing. It will give you the perception like they're clickable. Yeah, exactly. And those are little details that we sometimes as developer don't value because we're more focused in the code, and we always have a designer there that's worrying about all of this, but they actually make an impact on the user experience and how our users interact with the app, right? And another cool thing we also factor here, as you said, wouldn't it be cool if I will like be able to disable some of the stats. Let's say I only want to see the clones and the unique clones. So we went ahead and made these cards also tappable. And basically when you tap them, it disables one of the charts. Because let's say I have too many views and then you see how little the clones look over here, but I want to see only the clones, right? So all of that, that's why we learned that the feedback loop and the workflow you're using is so important to the process.
Luis, and there's a question about if that's a VS Code extension or another tool that you're using to show the UI.
Oh, yeah. Great question. So the tool we're using here is called Adobe Xd. It's totally free. And we basically design, we use this tool. It's a great tool to design UIs. A lot of designers use them, and it's really easy to use. And some really good advantages it gives you that it also allows you to do a prototype immediately of your design. So basically, you can take the Canva you have and connect them between each other, and have a little demo of your app immediately. So you can show it to your client, show it to your product owner, and give approvals on changes before even coding it, which is something we wanted to have as well, because we were completely redesigning the look and feel of the app, and we wanted to be as easy as possible to navigate through, right?
So when here you're able to visualize your changes and your ideas, how'd you go about putting it in front of folks and validating those ideas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually have a blog post. I think I shared you the link in the chat, in which in which we have basically what are the steps we went through. Over here, the chat can see it. So
could you zoom in just a little bit? It's a bit small.
Yes.
Yep, it's great. Thank you.
Here, and let me scroll down to the part where we have what's gonna be discussed here. So here we learned that this research we did was really important, and that any developer with the proper tools and fundamentals and framework can actually design some beautiful UI like this, and doesn't have to die trying, right? You don't have to spend 6-8 months studying design, going to school. You just need to follow the documentation, and there's a lot of documentation in designs. Like each operating system have their own design guidelines. Like Android has material design, and iOS has the human what are they called, Brandon?
Human interface guidelines.
Yeah, human interface guidelines. Yeah, and you basically go to their site, and you can get great information about how to deal with buttons, how to deal with colors, how to create dark themes. So we gather all the information and condense it in a way that after you read in this 5 blogs, you can literally have you can literally have great changes in your UI, like in 2 to 3 days after you go through all of them. Like it's gonna be a notable change, as you see we did here. And yeah, great topics that we deal with are like the branded dark surfaces and the dark theme. Like if you notice here,
this is something I had no idea existed.
Yeah, and it's a feature that a lot of our users requested, because a lot of users use our app in the night, and there's people that have also the white light affects their eyes. So we're also worried about having the app available for everyone and making sure that it's as user-friendly as possible. So we had to work with dark theme, but we have no clue what a dark theme was and like how we should compose it, right? And
how do you do shadows in dark theme? Like we made these beautiful cards, like the rows listing all your GitHub repos. We made those in the light theme, but we're using shadows to give it depth and elevation. And once everything goes dark or goes black, I think we're like using this off black color here. It's like, well, then how do you show a shadow on a black background?
Exactly.
And there's also the whole accessibility aspect as well when you're designing UIs, right? You want to make sure that you have the right color contrast and all of that. I don't know if you guys had to think about that as well as going through.
Yeah, that's a whole new topic as well.
We have shows about it.
Yeah, when we discover about accessibility and that we had to have enough contrast between the colors, that's when we said, okay, how do we pick colors? Like, what is a color? So we had to discover that you should always use colors with good contrast between them. So that's why there's color palettes, right? That's why you always notice in apps that they most of the time have 2 main colors, right? So they have the primary color, which is the one you use for the bars and the dark backgrounds. So in our case, in the Git Trends app, our primary color is this teal color, right? but you also have another color, which is the accent color. And that color should have good contrast in front of your primary color. Why? Because when you turn the screen to black and white, or someone that is colorblind, they should be able to see the different shades of gray and differentiates between the two buttons or components in the screen. So that's super important. Because someone colorblind then wouldn't be able to see, let's say, this car from this background. So that was super important for us also to cover, and it was a really interesting topic to learn about as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and there's
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to also touch on the different color blindness, because there's different ways that folks can experience color blindness. It's not just you are colorblind and everything's black and white. Like I forget all the names, but yeah, sometimes you have trouble with green, sometimes you have trouble with reds. And there's a really cool tool that we used. When we come back to my screen later, I can show it off, that allows you to essentially overlay this window, this tool, you overlay this window that the tool provides on top of your monitor, and then it'll change the colors so that you can experience what that looks like. And that was something that, before we launched this update to the App Store, just went through the whole app with the different color blindness to make sure that, can you still tell these colors apart? Because if we say that clones is colored yellow, but you see that yellow color is the same color as views, then there's really no point in having a color there. So I'll show off this tool when we come back to my screen later, because it's really cool and really helpful, and also just really eye-opening to see how other people experience the world too.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, I kind of want to go back to something. You mentioned that, for example, Apple has their human interaction guidelines, and to a certain extent, there are certain guides that kind of help you with this. But at the end of the day, you have two different Android and iOS. They have different ways of approaching it, right? Does Xamarin help you try to unify those designs and like help you out a little bit, or do you kind of have to write, one does based on certain guidelines you have to write it for Android, and based on other guidelines you write for iOS? How does that work?
No, so that's something we really love about Xamarin Forms specifically, because Xamarin Forms basically does this work for you. So in Xamarin Forms, you can literally just declare, you have like a unify button, right? But on the background, this button, when you compile the app for Android or iOS, it's gonna get rendered as a native button either for Android and iOS, and it's gonna take the style from each operating system automatically. So all of this work is basically like 90% of the work is done for you, unless you want to really customize that button. Like you want to go down to the native level and do some Android specific style on that button that it's only available on that platform. You can definitely do that as well. And it's really easy to do. You just create a renderer for that button, and you basically relate it to the Xamarin Forms button, and the app will know which renderer to use because you're relating them together, right? So it's also going to render it automatically with your new style you're giving it in your app. So Xamarin Forms definitely is a huge help for us in this project. Mm-hmm. And awesome. Another thing good to notice is that, as you said, we have both guides, the iOS and the Android one. But something we must remember is that rules are there, and for most of the time, you can break them, right? Because most of the time you can break them, but you gotta know why you're breaking them, right? So that's basically what we did. We said we want to have a unified experience between both. We're not causing too much change for the user in each platform. So if you notice, we're using a lot of the concepts from material design, and we have them also in the iOS app. So this was totally our decision. We decided that we wanted the app to look use the feel of material design in both platforms. But yeah, definitely you can have two completely designs, and Xamarin Forms makes it really easy for you.
Yeah, and in this case, you're showing sort of the layout for a mobile device, and in terms of Windows, there's no Windows Phone anymore, unfortunately. Rest in peace, Windows Phone.
Yeah.
But how would this all these designs and ideas that you put together here, how would that scale? And you gave the example that you're trying to take a look at how can we bring this to Windows, which I would imagine is more of that sort of desktop form factor. Would that require a lot of work? Like how would that work?
Yeah, so that's where we need to come back to our mock-up here and decide, have that design decision, right? We will have maybe a session in the live stream and be speaking with Brandon and be like, oh, should we create a different, like adapt to the Windows guidelines, or do we also want to keep our unique design in the Windows world? And yeah, that's totally up to us. But I don't know, Brandon. What do you think? When we go to Windows, are we gonna change it?
Well, I think there's kind of two parts to that question, because right now this is very much a mobile app. So everything's kind of centered around the fact that it's the only app that appears on the screen. It's essentially a full screen app. Everything needs to be tappable for a thumb. So things we think about is, where do we put buttons in a place that's convenient for your thumb to tap it, so you don't have to reach all the way up or use a second hand. And so, yeah, I think the first part of the question is just how are we going to handle desktop? And I say desktop because there's also opportunities in the future to bring it to Mac OS as well. And once you leave the touch interface and move to a pointer, mouse, and click interface, things get a lot different, because like with touch, your buttons have to be a certain pixel size just so the human finger can literally tap the button. But with a pointer, you get a lot more. What's the word I'm looking for? You can get a lot more specific with your clicks. You can basically click on one pixel at a time, whereas my fingers can't do that because they're too big. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think probably the easiest way to do it right would be to just push it, get it on Mac OS and Windows, and then let's see what it's like. Let's see like where is this weird, right? Like, why do we have a button here? Because it made sense on mobile because your thumb's near the bottom, but maybe on desktop we moved it to the top, and it's definitely doable. Like with Xamarin Forms, you can change your design based on the paradigm. So just like we can tweak things between the different platforms like iOS and Android, we can also say, is this running on desktop? And if it is, we can make things like, maybe we make certain icons bigger or smaller. Maybe we rearrange things so they fit in more of a 16:9 horizontal window instead of this very vertical interface. But yeah, that's one of those things. You kind of need to experience it first. And you kind of need to like feel that pain of what the user would go through and see like what needs to be fixed. And then I think once we have that UI paradigm understood for like how this would work on desktop, then yeah, like there's definitely certain Windows aesthetics we could bring in, like just like on iOS. It still very much has an iOS look and feel because it's a native iOS app with this material design and kind of brought into it. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's a very, very exciting time with .NET 6 on the horizon, with just, it seems like endless possibilities, which I guess also means like endless work for us.
Yeah.
We have fantastic job security for this free app.
That's always good.
Yeah, and the good part about us doing it on this way, how we wanted to first create the mockup and create the design project, is that given this different scenarios you're talking about, like, oh, we need to support a different platform and this platform behave this way, we already have the groundwork to move to that platform, right? We already have the color scheme, we have everything defined in this file, and we have enough space to just start working on those designs, right? And just start reusing all the components we have defined in the project already. So
Awesome.
I wanted to revisit something Brandon was saying, and it's about like how do the components in the screen make you feel? And that's something that was really important for us at the moment of redesigning this app, right? Because initially the settings screen only had this disconnect button and the preferred charts. But as we continue working on the app, this page started growing and growing and growing because we kept adding new features like, okay, now you have dark mode. So now you can switch between it and put dark mode as predefined, right? If you don't activate this, it's gonna take whatever theme your device has by default, right? And then we added push notifications. And later on, if I go a little bit down the history.
This is what we're working on right now,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, these are the latest features we launched now on December. We worked on the creating an about page, on perfecting the settings page. We also creating some empty states because sometimes you have data, a list with data, and sometimes there's no data. But if you don't show something to the user, he might think the app is broken, right? So that's another important thing we learned, that even if you don't have data available, you should still interact with the user and make him know everything is fine. Don't uninstall my app, please. Don't give me 1 star. And it's just that you don't have data at the moment, right? So coming back here to the settings page, if you notice, look how big it got, right? So if you also notice, we had to completely change the UI here. The preferred charts was before, it was like a big tab view, right? So you will tap between them and it would change. So since we added the theme and the language and we decided to add it as a picker with a button, this no longer felt like it was in the right place because we had these two with this design and this one with the big tab here. So we did a whole redesign just to change this and add the about here. And now you can see how everything looks balanced and everything looks like following the same line. So yeah, definitely a lot of exciting changes coming. You can tune in to our live stream each Wednesday and Friday on the .NET Dominicana Twitch channel. We are redesigning adding this new feature and doing now the About Us page completely live. On Wednesday, we do our brainstorming for the mockups, and on Friday, we live code this part of each of the features to the app. So now I want to turn it back to Brandon so he can continue with the next part.
Sweet. Yeah. Let's take a look at some code.
Sure. We'll jump back real quick. Whoop. So before jumping into any code, I see we just have a couple minutes left, but this is that app I was talking about that helps you see or experience what folks experiencing color blindness see. And what's neat is, so we can put it back to what they call the normal vision here, but then here's all the different categories of color blindness. And so you can kind of walk through them in your app to see how different users are going to experience it. And does everything still make sense? Or do we rely on a certain color too much? Or is that color too close to somebody who maybe has, I hope I pronounce this right, color blindness. So yeah, highly recommend that.
What is the name?
Oh, good question. Sim Daltonism.
Okay.
So kind of obscure. I found it in the Mac App Store, but it works great. And like I said, you don't have to.
And is this only for much. Is this for Android and iOS, or what OS is can you run this on? Or
good question. Let's see if we can give this app a bigger shout out here. So Sim Daltonism. There we go.
Oh,
let's
sweet.
see. It looks like it's made for iOS and for Mac. Oh, cool. It's open source as well. GitHub, full circle. Look at that.
We love open source.
Yep.
Give it a star. Very cool. And yeah, like I said, I just love that it's just this window you can overlay, and then you can just kind of walk through your app and see what other folks see. So yeah, we only have a couple minutes left, so let's show off just a little bit of code here. I do want to touch on just this architecture real quick too, because like we mentioned, this is all done in C#. So iOS app, Android app, backend APIs, they're all done in C#. And so like we touched on earlier, the benefit there is we can share code between our iOS app and our Android app. We can even share code between my backend APIs that I made using Azure Functions and the mobile app, which is really cool. So you don't have to like recreate, like DTOs are a big one, right? Like here's the data I'm sending to the API. Here's the data the API is sending back. Well, we can share that code. So you only have to change that code once and your API gets the update and your mobile app gets the update. And then also with testing, so we've got a whole suite of unit tests. We've got a whole suite of UI tests. All of it's done in C#, and you get this just awesome benefit where you can share, leverage the code that's already done, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So with this app, yes, it's made in Xamarin Forms, but probably what the most surprising thing to most people will be is it's all done in C#. And so what we're doing here is we're using there's this cool new thing called the Xamarin Community Toolkit, and it has specifically this Xamarin Community Toolkit .markup library where you can create your UIs. Well, I should take a step back. You have always been able to create UIs for Xamarin Forms in C#. A lot of people prefer to do it in XAML. If you're already familiar with XAML, that's great. I never personally used XAML before I started working at Xamarin, so I've been living in the C# world forever. But let's see if we bring up, since we've been looking at the settings page a bunch. And so what's cool with doing it like this is we keep everything in C#, and we can just, let's see if we can show this side by side here. Little mobile app, settings page, boom. So you'll notice the about page stuff is commented out because that's still a work in progress. But you can, basically what I just made is I made a grid, and we just gave names to the rows and columns in the grid. So if you can kind of picture a bunch of columns here, like there's a column called icon, and that's this column where these icons go. And there's a column called title, so that's this column where the titles go. And a column called button, that's the third column over here. And then all the way down, there's all these different rows where like we put the GitHub user, this little separator line, the login button, or in this case, the log out button because I'm already logged in. So you can kind of just define your rows and columns, and then you just plug everything in. And so what's cool with doing this in Xamarin Forms and specifically in C# with these markup extensions is since I already have the rows and columns defined, I can just create these UI objects. So like the separator line or the login row, specifically, like that's the SVG buttons. That's the icon right here. And I just say, I'm going to use this SVG, and I want you to be in the row login and in the column icon. And then bloop, it gets dropped in right there. And so it's a really cool way to create your Xamarin Forms apps. Like I said, a lot of people do use XAML for Xamarin Forms. That's totally cool. If you already use XAML and you love it, great, keep using it. But for folks like me who have never used XAML before, there is this whole other world, whole other option of doing it in C#. And I really, really like it because I like the fact that everything can remain type safe. Like I can use all the Visual Studio tools like for example, we use a lot of bindings. This is all done in the MVVM model view model architecture. And when it comes to bindings, this is how the view talks to the view model. So it's like, what happens when you tap a button? Well, the view doesn't know. All that action happens in the view model. And the nice thing with keeping it all in C# is we can take advantage of cool things like this name of operator to get the property we want to bind to. But now it's also type safe. So, we could refactor and rename this button to be, new name, and then it just works. Whereas in XAML, you don't get the name of operator. You have to kind of hard code in that property name as a string, and it can make life a little bit more painful when you're refactoring stuff. So check it out. Highly recommend it. Yeah,
and
sorry,
it
go ahead.
feels like for someone like I haven't done much Xamarin in my career, so like it seems easy for me to kind of like if I wanted to start contributing to a project that it has familiarity because it's C#, right? I don't know. At least it seems easy for me to read and understand the code, looking at it as
Absolutely.
like this.
And yeah, you can kind of tell like our brains work similar with C#, whereas some folks worked in WinForms or WPF for years, and they're just very fluent in XAML, and they can just see XAML code and picture it in their head, and it's a beautiful thing. But I kind of likewise have that same experience with this code in C#, where it's just very straightforward, easy to read, having the rows and columns defined with actual names instead of like in XAML, it's just row 0, column 0. And I would always forget, like, is this going row 1 or row 0? How many rows are we spanning? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, look, I got a little push notification.
It was kind.
Wow.
Part of
The show is happy.
That was totally unplanned.
Yep.
Awesome.
Go there, GitHubTrends.com, right?
Yeah.
Git Trends.
Git Trends, sorry.
GitTrends.com. Yeah.
Cool. So I guess the other really nice thing about this, right, is that kind of like you mentioned, when you're doing a C#, if like I haven't done much Xamarin myself, but sort of doing desktop applications, this way of doing it feels very much like that in terms of defining everything, the UI elements in C#. So that's really neat for folks who may be, as you mentioned, desktop developers that want to do some mobile UI.
Yeah. Yep. And if it's not, let us know too. I mean, I work closely with the Xamarin team, and we're always looking for product feedback and things we can make better, especially with .NET MAUI is going to be this new, it's essentially the evolution of Xamarin. And it's coming out in, well, early previews should be out in a couple months, but it'll be finalized later this year. So yeah, if you have feedback, now's an awesome time to do it, because we are iterating on Xamarin. So a lot of it is performance based, so kind of like ripping out the guts and re-architecting it so your apps run faster. Like your Xamarin apps will just run faster, which is really cool. But also, yeah, like design decisions like this, like how do you want to architect your apps? Like, so there's conversations around sticking with MVVM architecture, which it definitely will. Expanding to use the MVU, model view update architecture, which we have some experimental products like that. There's mobile Blazor bindings, which allows you to basically create mobile apps using the Blazor syntax, which is really cool. And so all of that's happening right now. So definitely check it out. If anybody out there has ideas, or maybe another cool experimental project like mobile Blazor bindings or MVU, bring it in and share it with the community, because now is when all these decisions and designs are being done. So we have this awesome opportunity to mold the future of, say, C# and mobile as we go forward.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting, and it's nice that folks have that option, right? Like if you, like as you mentioned, so it sounds like MAUI, there's going to be MVU is going to more heavily influence that, that particular set of apps. But for folks, if they want to do Blazor bindings, right? Like they all, as with anything, right? They all have trade-offs. So it's a matter of, okay, well, which one, A, do I feel more comfortable developing with, and B, what exactly fits my needs, and having more options. It's, at least to me, right? That's always a positive.
Absolutely. And kind of the way to think about it is, those are really, those design patterns are all running on top of the same MAUI engine. And so it's kind of like you can choose your architecture, your MVVM, your MVU, and then that'll run through this .NET MAUI layer, which is essentially what translates that all into the native platform. So if you want to put a button on the screen, MAUI knows how to make that a button on iOS, and MAUI knows how to make it a button on Windows and a button on Android. And kind of it's up to you on how you want to architect your apps, and those are all open to it. So it's this really cool, flexible future for making apps, and it allows for all these different design paradigms to come in as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we are actually at time, and this has been great. I personally learned a lot, and I want to thank you folks for coming on and joining the show. Next week, make sure to tune in. We're going to have Samir Mansour joining us to talk about automating kombucha availability with .NET. So stay tuned. Until then, thanks a lot, folks, for joining, and we'll see you later. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.